welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a whole stack of recent tech news digests articles you've shared.
Yeah, quite a pile.
Right. And our mission, as always, is to cut through all that noise, pull out the really key insights, maybe uncover some surprising stuff, and just help you get informed quickly on what's actually shaping tech right now.
And there's a lot shaping it. The pace is just incredible, isn't it? These sources really capture that, from the huge AI players down to the gadgets we use every day.
Absolutely. And yeah, let's start with AI, because it feels like it's touching everything. Specifically how it's expanding so fast into business tools, but also all the, friction that's creating around data.
That's a really good way to put it, friction. The sources definitely highlight companies like OpenAI, pushing hard to get their models embedded in the workplace.
How so?
Well, they mention significant new cloud integrations, things like hooking ChatGPT directly into, Google Drive, Box services you probably already use.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. So this isn't just like asking it to draft an email anymore.
No, much deeper.
This means you could point it at your own documents, your team's files, meeting notes, whatever, and ask it to find things, summarize, pull out action items.
Precisely. That's the goal, yeah. To use the AI's power directly on your existing knowledge base, right inside your workflow. The sources talk about a new record mode for meetings, specifically. Designed to automate the note-taking, spit out action items automatically. And there's also a mention of MCP connection support for the paid Tiers Pro, Team, Enterprise.
MCP? What's that?
Model connectivity platform. Basically, it lets the AI connect deeply with and analyze data from more complex structured systems, not just text files. Think databases, business intelligence tools, really important for deep research.
Right. So they're building these heavy-duty bridges into the corporate world.
Exactly.
And the numbers seem to back it up. They've apparently hit 3 million paying business users. That's pretty fast growth. Shows companies are definitely interested.
Oh, yeah. It really underlines the perceived value, the efficiency gains they're hoping for. But like you said, feeding all this internal data, potentially sensitive stuff, into these models. Yeah, it immediately raises big questions. Trust, ownership, privacy.
Really is the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
When AI meets your specific data. And yeah, the sources are full of examples of this tension playing out legally, ethically.
They really are. I mean, look at the Reddit situation. Suing Anthropic.
Right. What's the claim there?
Reddit's alleging Anthropic just hoovered up vast amounts of Reddit user data to train their AI models. No permission, no payment. The sources even claim Anthropic hit Reddit's systems over 100,000 times, even after supposedly saying they'd stopped using the data.
Wow. So basically taking a public company's valuable content to build a competing product and not paying for it.
That's the accusation, yeah. It gets right to the heart of, who owns the value created from data that's publicly accessible but maybe still proprietary. And then you've got OpenAI itself. The sources report they're actively trying to block a court order, an order that would force them to save all ChatGPT user logs. Even Chat's users thought they deleted.
Wait, hang on. They want to avoid being forced to save logs, including deleted ones. Why would a company, especially one handling user data, want to block data preservation?
Well, the sources suggest this is happening alongside these big copyright lawsuits against OpenAI. The implication or accusation is that maybe they're destroying evidence, or at least not preserving stuff that could be relevant. It certainly doesn't look great for building trust, especially when you're simultaneously asking businesses, hey, connect your internal documents to our system.
Yeah, that's a really stark contrast. Push for deep data integration on one side while seemingly fighting transparency or data retention on the other.
And it's not just ownership battles. The sources also mention findings about malicious groups, reportedly Chinese state-linked groups, using tools like ChatGPT for bad stuff.
Like what?
Things like generating fake news or disinformation at scale, or even creating scripts to help with password brute force attacks.
Okay, so the same power that boosts productivity can also be weaponized. So putting this all together, the models meeting tons of data, the messy legal fights over who owns it, the lack of transparency, the potential for misuse. What does all this tension actually mean for, your ability to trust these AI systems, both the security of your data and the reliability of what the AI tells you?
It really forces everyone, individuals, companies, to think much more critically about the whole AI supply chain. Like, where did the training data come from? How are the outputs generated? What are the risks? It's kind of a foundational challenge for this whole AI era we're entering.
Definitely. Okay, so while the enterprise world is wrestling with these huge data questions, Let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about the tech that's, more directly in your hands.
Yeah.
Or on your wrist.
Yeah.
Every day. Lots of buzz around Apple, right? WWDC 25 is coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, the sources are pointing to some expected updates, especially for AirPods.
Oh.
Rumors suggest new features like head gestures. Imagine nodding to take a call, shaking your head to decline, that kind of thing.
Huh. Head gestures. That's kind of cool. Potentially useful.
Yeah, maybe. Also, sleep auto pause, camera control stuff, something called audio mix, and wider support for AirPods in classrooms, apparently.
Interesting. What about the bigger platforms? iOS, macOS?
The general expectation is, pretty significant updates across the board, probably focusing on design refreshes, software improvements, usability, performance. But interestingly, the sources suggest AI might play a slightly smaller, less flashy role this year compared to maybe what Google or others have announced.
Really? So maybe Apple's taking a more cautious, slower approach to rolling out generative AI features everywhere?
That could be it. More evolutionary than revolutionary this year, perhaps.
Any specific little features rumored for, say, iOS 26?
Yeah, a few things mentioned. Potential Notes app support for exporting in Markdown format.
Oh, that'd be handy for some folks.
Definitely. Also talk of automatic translation features built deeper in and maybe the ability to do simple polls right inside messages. Quality of life stuff.
Okay. Now, speaking of devices you wear
Yeah.
and apps, this one caught my eye.
Ah, right. Snapchat users with an Apple Watch finally getting some love. For ages, you could only really see notifications, maybe a quick preview.
Yeah, pretty limited.
But the sources say Snapchat's finally launching a proper, dedicated watchOS app.
And what does that actually let you do?
Respond. You can actually reply to snaps directly from your watch now.
Finally.
Exactly. It sounds small, but for heavy Snapchat users, that's a big deal. Makes the watch feel more like a real communication tool, less like just a notification screen, less pulling out your phone.
Yeah, practical win there.
Yeah.
And speaking of devices people are excited about, one that had people literally lining up recently.
Gotta be the Nintendo Switch, too. Yeah, sources confirm the launch, and yeah, the typical scenes, long lines, super excited gamers. The Nintendo magic, it builds on the original Switch, which was just massive. Sold something like 150 million units.
150 million, that's just staggering. What's new with Switch 2 that's got people so hyped, according to the sources?
Seems like refinements, mostly. Enhancing the core experience. Sources mention a bigger screen, better graphics naturally, and larger controls, maybe for more comfort.
Okay.
So it looks like Nintendo is sticking with what works, that hybrid handheld console idea, and just polishing the hardware based on feedback and tech improvements, not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Makes sense. If it ain't broke. Okay, let's shift gears one more time. We've hit AI in the office, tech in your pocket. Now let's look at two areas where you hear huge claims about AI's impact, sometimes maybe a bit overblown. Self-driving cars and jobs.
Oh, yeah. Prime examples where the hype often runs way ahead of the reality on the ground. With self-driving, the sources really contrast the strategies. You've got Waymo, right?
Google's project.
Right. Their approach is very focused, heavily geofenced, limited areas, basically. Concentrated in dense urban places where things are complex, but kind of predictable within that mapped zone.
Okay, and that's different from Tesla's approach.
Very different. Tesla's famously gone for the no-map, universal strategy. Trying to solve driving anywhere, relying mostly on cameras, computer vision, not detailed maps.
Right.
But the sources point out that while the drive anywhere dream sounds bigger, Waymo's focused, geofenced urban approach is actually seeing more practical success right now in terms of actual operational rides.
And what does that success look like, numbers-wise?
Waymo's apparently doing over 250,000 paid driverless rides a week in their zones.
250,000 a week, wow.
Yeah. And the source argues this urban focus is smart because, well, something like 83% of the U.S. population lives in urban areas anyway.
Good point.
So the thinking is, maybe solving the easy 80% of driving is one thing, but solving that really hard, unpredictable last 20% everywhere, weird rural roads, crazy weather, novel situations that might actually take 80% of the total effort.
Okay, let me make sure I get this. So Waymo's basically saying, let's nail driving in these dense mapped cities first, because that covers most people and is achievable now, rather than trying to boil the ocean and solve driving everywhere all at once, which is proving super hard for that last 20%.
Precisely. It's kind of a deep but narrow versus wide but shallow approach. And the sources suggest deep and narrow is winning right now in terms of actual deployment and scale.
That definitely paints a clearer picture than just hearing headlines. Okay, now, the other big one. Jobs. We hear it constantly, right? AI is coming for all the jobs.
Yeah, and the source we looked at takes a pretty strong stance against that fear. It argues really forcefully, actually, that there's just no evidence right now that AI can, will, or even has replaced a large chunk of jobs across the economy.
That really cuts against the grain of a lot of the media narrative and even what some tech folks say.
It absolutely does, and the source backs it up with history. Says, look back hundreds of years. The Industrial Revolution, computers, the internet, all those tech shifts definitely changed jobs, displaced some, sure.
Right.
But consistently, they ended up creating more jobs overall than they destroyed, resulting in, higher productivity, whole new industries, more options for people.
So this source is basically saying AI isn't fundamentally different from like the steam engine or the PC in terms of its long-run impact on total employment.
In terms of the aggregate number of jobs, yeah, that's the argument. The source basically blames the AI will replace everyone narrative on, quote, tech execs doing marketing, hyping the tech and media chasing clicks with scary headlines.
So the fear might be more about marketing spin and sensationalism than actual data or trends, at least so far.
That's what this source argues, and it even points to Alphabet's CEO, Sundar Pichai. He apparently said publicly he does not think AI will shrink their workforce.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, quite the opposite. He expects they'll need to expand engineering because AI speeds up innovation, which creates more demand for workers to build and manage all the new stuff.
That's a much more grounded, maybe even optimistic view based on the evidence presented here. Suggests AI is more likely a tool that changes how we work and creates new kinds of work, not just mass unemployment. That's a really important perspective.
Yeah, shifts the focus from just fear to thinking about adaptation skills.
Exactly. Okay, before we wrap, let's hit a couple of quick, fascinating nuggets that popped out from the sources. Just interesting standalone things.
Yeah, there was one about Japanese scientists. They've apparently developed a new kind of plastic.
Okay, new plastic. We hear about biodegradable stuff, but often it needs like special industrial composting, right?
Exactly. That's why this one is potentially huge. The source says this new plastic dissolves completely in seawater within hours, leaves no harmful residue.
Wait, dissolves in seawater in hours. Seriously, that sounds like, well, a potential game changer for ocean plastic pollution.
It really does. Apparently, the science is it's designed to break down when it hits salt, and then naturally occurring marine bacteria just process the components. And get this, when it's coated, it's supposedly as strong as regular petroleum plastic.
Wow. So it could actually be used for packaging and stuff.
Potentially, yeah. Seems viable. And the sources also stress it's non-toxic, non-flammable, and doesn't emit CO2 when it breaks down. Commercialization plans weren't detailed, but you can imagine the interest this is getting.
Yeah, no kidding. That is genuinely incredible at scales. Anything else quick?
Just one more, circling back to AI quickly. Hugging Face, big name in open source AI, they've released a new open AI model for robotics called Small VLA.
Small VLA. SMOL, like small.
Exactly. That's the idea. It's designed to be lightweight enough to run on, like, normal hardware. Sources say a single consumer GPU, even a recent MacBook.
Okay, why is that a big deal?
Well, usually, running sophisticated AI for robots' navigation, manipulation needs really powerful, expensive computers. This makes it way more accessible. Smaller labs, startups, hobbyists even, can now experiment and develop robotics AI much more easily.
Ah, so it lowers the barrier to entry, democratizes it a bit.
Pretty much. Could really speed up innovation in robotics, manufacturing, drones, you name it.
That's great. Removing those hurdles often unlocks a lot of progress.
Definitely something to watch.
Okay, so wow, we've covered a ton of ground here, from AI getting deep into business and all the data battles that creates, to new stuff potentially coming to our phones and watches, a reality check on self-driving and AI job impacts, and even this amazing seawater dissolving plastic and more accessible robotics AI.
Yeah, it really paints this picture of just relentless technological change happening super fast across so many different areas all at the same time. Which leads to maybe a final thought. Given this sheer volume and speed, I mean, AI systems getting good enough to potentially fake reality, fundamental materials changing, devices evolving, how do you, the listener, even keep up? How do you sort through it all, figure out what's real or trustworthy, especially when things like photos or videos can be easily faked now? Where do you even focus your attention in the middle of all this rapid change?
That is the challenge, isn't it? Staying informed, thinking critically, looking past the hype. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the latest swirl of tech news. We hope these insights gave you something to chew on, maybe spark some curiosity to explore further.